catching a reflection in the hall mirror. Just a passing glance, and the breath catches. Who is that older woman looking back? It is so hard to comprehend. We spend our entire lives assuming we are exactly the same person. The person we were at 20, 30 or 40. And then time catches up. I look down at my hands resting in my lap. The skin is translucent now, tracing blue veins and fragile bones. Looking at these hands, I remember what they used to do, how they planted a garden in the spring of 1982, how they held a child, how they kneaded dough and gripped a steering wheel on a long drive down the coast. Now, they tremble just a little when holding a cup of tea. It is a profoundly disorienting thing to inhabit a body that has suddenly decided to show the passage of time. They say it creeps up on us much faster than we ever expect. But the great, unspoken shock of it all is what happens inside. Behind the fading eyes and the thinning hair, I am exactly the same. Stepping out onto the high street, the pace of life has changed. My knees ache, and I have to think carefully about where I place my feet on the uneven pavement. But my thoughts still move so quickly. The mind races ahead, observing, cataloguing, darting from the shape of a passing cloud to the worried expression on a stranger's face. The contrast is startling, a sharp, brilliant mind trapped inside a slowing frame. Society has a habit of looking right through us when we move slowly. We become part of the scenery. To the young rushing past with their heads full of tomorrow, we are invisible. Dwindling energy is, truthfully, one of the most boring things about getting older. Some mornings I wake up and the energy is there and I think I am back to normal. But it never lasts. I simply have to resign myself to taking more breaks and doing less. Let me just listen to the rain for a moment. It has been falling since late afternoon, washing the world away, blurring the street lamps out there in the dark. When the house is this still, I sit in a room surrounded by objects from a life that has passed. A chipped ceramic bowl from a holiday in France. A tarnished brass clock that belonged to my mother. A bookshelf bowing under the weight of paperbacks I read when I still believed I had the time to understand everything in the world. Each object holds a memory, keeping me company. Earlier today, an old song came on the radio. A faded tune from decades ago, and instantly the years simply collapsed. I wasn't just remembering being 25. I was 25. The music opened a door and I stepped right through it. I could feel the exact texture of the air from that summer. I could smell the damp pavement. I felt the exact same hopeful, terrifying flutter in my chest. There is a photograph on the mantelpiece. Faded faces trapped in a split second of light. Looking at the woman standing there, smiling, wearing a heavy wool coat I haven't owned in 40 years, I realize that she hasn't gone anywhere. We carry all our former selves within us. The girl whose heart broke so violently she thought she would die of it. The mother, the worker, and the striving creature who wanted so much from the world. They are all sitting right here, listening to the same rain. Of course, there is loneliness, and there is grief. Grief is a heavy guest. It turns out to be a place none of us truly know until we reach it. It happens in a perfectly ordinary instant. You sit down to dinner, and then you wonder where the years went. We try to be rational, yet we engage in a kind of magical thinking. Everything will be all right. I'm not the only one in this situation, but time, relentless and merciful time, carries us forward. The sharp edges of grief eventually dull into a persistent ache and finally into a weary surrender. The missing never entirely stops. It just becomes part of the unseen foundations of the mind. We tend to become convinced that everything is getting worse simply because our own physical boundaries are contracting. But if we wait long enough, there is a strange sudden lightness to be found. When we are no longer driven by the fierce, unrelenting engines of ambition and physical desire, other things become vastly more interesting. That storm of youth finally passes. The dust settles, and we actually have the time to simply look at the world. Looking at things is never time wasted. The shape of a pebble, the intricate veins of a leaf, the beauty of a painting. These small, solitary notices gather in the mind, shouldering aside even the memory of the most passionate love affairs. We realize that greatness is not achieved merely by physical speed or dexterity, but through reflection, the weight of character, and the clarity of judgment. There is a profound peace in watching the young ones rush about and watching them without envy. We are not just solitary figures walking off into the dark. We are taking our turn in the long, beautiful procession of humanity, leaving behind whatever small, invisible contributions we made. And so, we must come to the end of it. Mortality. It is the one shadow that hangs over every human life from the first breath. But as we draw nearer to it, the shadow changes shape. It loses its terror. What dies is not the value of a life. It is merely the worn-out container of the self, together with the self-awareness of itself. When the young die, it feels entirely unnatural, like a green apple plucked with difficulty from the branch. But when we are old, it is the result of ripeness. The apple mellows, and it simply falls of its own accord. The fire just goes out because the fuel has been consumed. The difference between being here, feeling the warmth of a fire, and non-being is abrupt and vast. It remains deeply shocking even though it happens to every living thing. Yet I sometimes feel that our minds are not entirely bound by the ticking of a clock. In the deepest hours of the night, in our dreams, we sense a relative timelessness, a feeling that the soul taps into a collective depth that stretches far beyond the brief flickering candle of our individual lifespan. And surely the mere fact of life is mysterious and exciting enough in itself. The reality of existence, in all its fleeting, heartbreaking impermanence, is profoundly beautiful. I have reached the point where I have no grand lessons to impart, no sudden, blinding epiphanies to offer the world. I am not sure that digging into our past guilts is a useful occupation for the very old, given that we can do so little about them now. I have reached a stage at which one hopes to be forgiven so that we might concentrate entirely on how to get through the present. I only know that it is a privilege to have been here, to have felt the sun on my face, to have loved, to have lost, to have grieved, and to have finally found peace. I'd like to quote a few lines from the comic poem Warning by Jenny Joseph, which is a favorite of mine. It celebrates approaching old age and the freedoms which one's twilight years can bring. When I am an old woman, I shall wear purple, with a red hat that doesn't go and doesn't suit me. And I shall spend my pension on brandy and summer gloves and satin sandals and say, we've no money for butter. I shall sit down on the pavement when I am tired and gobble up samples in shops and press alarm bells and run my stick along the public railings and make up for the sobriety of my youth. I shall go out in my slippers in the rain and pick the flowers in other people's gardens and learn to spit.